Hey there, pilots! This is Dauntless Sam, and today we'll be looking at the history of the Hawker Fury and the Hawker Nimrod and their flight characteristics in War Thunder. The Hawker Fury was a British biplane fighter aircraft used by the Royal Air Force in the 1930s. It was a fast, agile aircraft and holds the distinction of being the first interceptor in RAF service capable of more than 200 miles per hour. The Fury is the fighter counterpart to the Hawker Hart light bomber. The Hawker Fury was a development of the earlier Hawker F-20-27 prototype fighter, replacing the F-20-27's radial engine with the new Rolls-Royce F-11 V-12 engine, which was also used by Hawker's new light bomber, the Hawker Hart. The new fighter prototype, known as the Hawker Hornet, first flew at Brooklyn, Surrey in March 1929. The Hornet was a single-engined biplane with single-bay wings, initially powered by a 420-horsepower Rolls-Royce F-11C engine, enclosed by a smooth, streamlined cowling, but was quickly re-engined with a 480-horsepower Kestrel IS. It was evaluated against a similarly powered Fairey Firefly II, being preferred because of its better handling and its all-metal structure compared to the mainly wooden construction of the Firefly. The Hornet was purchased by the Air Ministry at the start of 1930 and was subject to further evaluation, with a small initial production order for 21 aircraft placed during 1930. The aircraft was then put under the designation of Hawker Fury, as the Air Ministry wanted fighter names that reflected veracity. The Fury 1 made its maiden flight at Brooklands with Chief Test Pilot George Bullman at the controls on March 25, 1931. The Fury was the RAF's first operational fighter aircraft to be able to exceed 200 miles per hour in level flight. It had highly sensitive controls, which gave it super aerobatic performance. It was designed partly for the fast interception of bombers, and to that end it had a climb rate of almost 2,400 feet per minute. An experimental prototype, the High-Speed Fury, was built to test design features for Hawker's planned competitor for the F-730 fighter competition, as well as for more general development. While the Hawker P version 3 was unsuccessful owing to the use of the unreliable evaporatively cooled Rolls-Royce Goosehawk engine, many of the improvements tested on the High-Speed Fury were incorporated in an improved Fury 2, with the cleaned-up airframe that reduced drag and a new 690-horsepower Mark IV Kestrel engine. These improvements gave improved speed and rate of climb. Designer at Hawk, Sidney Cam, designed a monoplane version of the Fury in 1933. It was not developed until the Rolls-Royce development of what would become their famous Merlin engine. The design that was revised according to the Air Ministry specification F5-34 became the prototype the Hawker Hurricane. The Fury Mark I entered squadron service with the RAF in May 1931. Owing to financial limitations caused by the Great Depression, only relatively small numbers of Fury Mark I's were ordered, the type equipping only 2 more squadrons. At the same time, the slower Bristol Bulldog equipped 10 fighter squadrons. The Fury Mark II entered service in 1936 through 1937, increasing total numbers of squadrons to 6. Furies remained with the RAF Fighter Command until January 1939, replaced primarily with the Gloucester Gladiators and other types such as the Hawker Hurricane. 3 Furies were ordered by Spain in 1935, it being intended to produce another 50 under license. The Spanish variant had a cantilever undercarriage designed with Doughty internally sprung wheels, similar to that used on the Gladiator, and was powered by a 612-horsepower Hispano-Suiza 12 XBR engine, reaching a speed of 234 miles per hour. The 3 Furies were delivered without armament on July 11, 1936, just before the outbreak of the Spanish Civil War. They were taken into service by the Spanish Republican Air Force, being fitted with machine guns scrounged from crashed aircraft. One Fury made a forced landing behind enemy lines due to a lack of fuel and was repaired by the Nationalists. although it was not used operationally, while the Republicans used one of the Furies in the defense of Madrid until it wrecked in a crash in November 1936. Although phased out of RAF squadrons, the Fury was still used by some foreign air forces in the early 1940s. Yugoslav Furies saw action against Axis forces in the German invasion of 1941. On April 6, 1941, a squadron of Furies took off to defend their country against the invading German Messerschmitt Bf-109Es and Messerschmitt Bf-110s. In the resulting conflict, 10 Furies were destroyed, almost the entire squadron. In an unequal battle against superior adversaries, 5 aircraft were destroyed while taking off, and 8 pilots were killed. 2 more Furies and a Bucher Bu-131 were destroyed on the ground. But of the attacking German aircraft, 5 Bf-109s and 2 Bf-110s failed to return. Though most were non-combat losses, however at least one was lost when rammed by a Fury. The other squadron of Yugoslav Furies, active at the time of the invasion, strafed enemy tanks and ground forces, some being lost to ground fire and one being destroyed in a dogfight with a Fiat CR-42. Ex-RAF Furies were also used by the South African Air Force against the Italian forces in East Africa in 1941, and despite their obsolescence, destroyed 2 Caproni bombers as well as strafing many airfields, destroying fighters and bombers on the ground. A total of 262 Furies were produced, of which 22 served in Persia, 3 in Portugal, at least 30 in South Africa, 3 in Spain, at least 30 in Yugoslavia, and the remainder in the United Kingdom. The Hawker Nimrod was a British carrier-based single-engine, single-seat biplane fighter aircraft, built in the early 1930s by Hawker Aircraft. In 1926, the Air Ministry specification N216 was intended to produce a successor to the Fairey Flycatcher, then in its 4th year of naval service. By the time it was replaced by the Nimrod in 1932, the Flycatcher had become so obsolete in terms of its speed that RAF officers who flew it often joked that a sprightly fly might actually give the aircraft a run for its money. None of the aircraft designed to this specification were selected for production after the trials in 1928, but the radial-engined Hawker Hoopo, not actually designed in 2126, was considered promising enough to be further developed. Despite the Navy's traditional preference for radial engines, Hawker's designer Sidney Cam was convinced by his experience with the landplane Hawker Fury that the future for shipborne aircraft also lay with inline engines and began such a design, powered by a Rolls-Royce Kestrel. Before it was completed, Air Ministry Specification 1630 was written around it. It flew under the initial name Norn early in 1930, received a production contract, and was renamed Nimrod. The Nimrod had an overall similarity to the Fury. It was a single-seater biplane with an open cockpit, fixed undercarriage, and guns firing through the propeller. Its unswept, constant chord, round-tipped wings had an unequal span and a strong stagger, the latter partly to enhance the pilot's view. The fabric-covered wings had metal spars and spruce ribs and carried balanced ailerons only on the upper wings. The Nimrod's fuselage was a worn girder structure of tubular steel and aluminum, surrounded by stringers which defined its oval cross-section. The Rolls-Royce F9MS engine, later renamed the Kestrel IIMS, was closely cowled in aluminum, and the rest of the fuselage fabric-covered. As with the Fury, the upper fuselage line was highest at the cockpit, placed between the trailing edges of the upper and lower planes. Its twin machine guns were mounted in the upper fuselage between the pilot and the engine, firing through the propeller using the standard interrupter gear. The tailplane was mounted on top of the fuselage and carried split-horn balanced elevators. The vertical tail had Hawker's familiar curved shape, with a deep, wide chord, unbalanced rudder extending to the keel. After testing in 1930, the prototype went with HMS Eagle to Buenos Aires, flying as part of the British Empire Trade Exhibition there in March 1931. It returned to RAF Martlesham Heath for final testing. A production order for 35 was placed, and the first of these flew on October 31st, 1931. In the following year, another contract for a further 19 Nimrod Mark I's was signed. With a top speed of 193 miles per hour, it was only marginally slower than its land-based counterpart, the Hawker Fury. A headrest fairing was added retrospectively to the Nimrod Mark I to ease pilot strain during catapult launches. Aircraft from the later production batch were fitted with arrestor hooks. Experiments with the first of this batch, refitted with swept upper and lower wings, led to the Nimrod Mark II. As well as the swept wings, this had at first a Kestrel II engine. Later, these were replaced by Kestrel V's. Nimrod Mark IIs had a slight increase in their rudder area to improve spin recovery of inverted, float-equipped aircraft. Originally, it was intended that the Mark II should have a corrosion-resistant stainless steel, but only 3 of these were built. The first of 2733 Nimrod Mark IIs was delivered in March 1933. The first production Nimrod Mark I's entered service in 1932 with number 408 flight on HMS Glorious. Others went to numbers 402 and 409 flights soon after. Fleet Air Arm flights were reorganized into squadrons early in 1933, with the Nimrods joining numbers 801, 802, and 803 squadrons RAF. The Nimrod II followed in September 1934. Few Nimrods were exported, though 1 aircraft was supplied to Japan, and 1 to Portugal, and 2 to Denmark. They were intended as pattern aircraft for proposed license building, and were essentially Nimrod Mark I's, though powered by Kestrel III engines. 1, unusually, was fitted with spats. The Nimrod had been replaced by more modern designs such as the Sea Gladiator by May 1939, before the start of World War II. In War Thunder, there are 2 Hawker Furies, the Mark I and the Mark II. The Mark I has a maximum speed 38 miles per hour slower than the Mark II, but both are capable of the same climb rate. There are also 2 variants of the Nimrod, the Mark I and the Mark II. Both the Nimrods share the same flight characteristics as the Fury Mark II. All 4 of the aircraft are equipped with 2 Vickers E 7.7mm machine guns with 1,200 rounds. When flying out with these aircraft, be sure to remember your maneuverability, force opponents low to the ground, and engage them in a turn fight. You should be able to out-turn almost any aircraft you engage. As with all biplanes, it is important to remember that you have no armor and to have a low maximum speed. Always be on the lookout for opponents trying to boom and zoom you. Of all of the reserve aircraft, the Fury Mark II and the Fury Mark I and Mark II have the highest maximum speed. Only Japanese reserved aircraft can come close to this speed. I hope that this information has proved helpful. If you liked the video, please do like the video. If you would like to see more videos like this, feel free to subscribe to the channel. And if you think anyone else would be interested in this video, don't be afraid to share it. This is Dauntless Sam. Thanks for watching.